Well, Sports Editors is really grateful to chat to Graeme Wepener from SACS, who's the head of rugby, and talk about school sports. So it's really good to have you on the show, Graeme. Thanks for your time. But Graeme, first up, how are you? And fill us in as to how long you've actually been the head of rugby at SACS for now.
I'm fine, thanks, and thanks for having me on. I've been head of rugby it's only my second year, which is I suppose, and they've both been dead years, to put it that way. In fact, that we've had barely any rugby. But I mean, I've been involved in rugby at SACS for 16 years, in various capacities. Maybe not formally titled head of rugby, but I think there are a couple of us who've looked after rugby over that period, and so I've been heavily involved for about 16 years. I've only formally had the title head of rugby for the last 2 years, but ironically, I've been head of sport for longer than that. So I've got sort of two titles, and but yeah, 2 years of this post, but basically been in the system for a long time.
Yeah. So basically, you're a busy man, to say the least. We'll just leave it there. But yeah, Graeme, just like you were saying earlier, it must have been a bit of a frustrating thing for you, because as things are going, it's been all shut down. But you guys played a couple of games, and how did you feel about those results, specifically from a first team point of view?
Yeah, I think reasonably happy. I mean, we lost both games fairly narrowly, but both games that we felt we could possibly have won. We had, it was one of those years where I think we said to ourselves, if we were at full strength, we'd be competitive in the league, but unfortunately picked up a couple of injuries early season and went into both of those games minus a number of players, and some of them quite key players. So to be as competitive as we were we were actually fairly happy with the outcomes. Obviously, you never go into a game hoping to lose, but in both games we were in the game right until the end and could possibly have won it. And given, as I say, the number of players we had out and important players, we were reasonably happy with our performances.
Good, man, good. But it's such an interesting one and a tricky situation. But if there's one thing you could sort of focus on to make sure rugby stays strong at SACS, what could that be, Graeme?
I think we've always prided ourselves on sort of capacitating our coaches and getting the best out of our coaches.
Right.
Which is something we still try and do, and upskill our coaches and get our coaching group working together really closely. But I suppose at the end of the day, I mean, the bottom line, I suppose, with any sport, any team is, you can have the best coaches, but also you've got to have players, I suppose. So
yeah,
I suppose one of the key components is making sure that you've got the talent in the school to coach. How you go about that's another question altogether. I think all the schools are trying to get the best players as they can onto the field, but there are various ways of going about it, some above board, some not above board. Obviously we try and do the best we can, but with the parameters we have as well, obviously there's schools like ours, academics comes first, so you've got to make sure kids are going to cope academically. But yeah, I mean, we're trying to, as I said, give the best rugby opportunity to our boys, but they've got to obviously perform academically first and foremost, and then we can take it from there as well.
Yeah, because just something that you touched on there, Graeme, and it's always an interesting one in terms of making sure you get good rugby players. So the recruitment comes in there as well. And is it on a fine line in terms of how you go about recruiting, or is it sort of like, we've got to do what we've got to do. Let's just get out there and go and get the players. Because there's also a certain talent pool that you can draw from. But in the same way, like you said, you guys have also got to focus on academics. So how do you sort of find the balance there, Graeme?
Yeah, I mean, I think you go to, we try and create contacts with the feeder schools in the area, and just chat to people there and find out who the players are coming through the system, things like that. But as you say, it's tricky. We're an English-speaking school with a high academic standards, so we've got only a fairly small group of people we can chat to and try and from a rugby point of view. So it's not a huge part of what we're about, but obviously as you'll probably touch on it later, but I suppose in the league we're in, if you want to remain competitive, you have to have fairly good players to compete.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it then, because it's so interesting. There's so many good schools, as everyone knows, in South Africa. But the league here is so competitive. There's just so many. You actually only need like 5 hands to count the amount of good rugby playing schools in the Western Cape. Would you consider it the strongest league in the country at the moment?
Everyone says it's the sort of cliche is that it's the strongest league in the world. I mean, I suppose there's no way of quantifying that really. I mean, I think we like to say it, I suppose, just to make ourselves feel good here in the Western Cape. But probably, as I said, no one really knows. But I think when you've got the likes of Paul Jim and Paul Boys and Paul Roos that you've got to play against every year, and a double round of games that we have in the Premier League here against Rondebosch, Bishops, Wynberg, and there's plus another game against Boland Landbou. So for us, we've got 10 games a season, which are massive fixtures. So it does make life difficult. And then you throw in now the improving schools like Stellenberg, Durbanville, who've put big effort into their rugby, even Brackenfell, Paul Fallet, schools like that in the area. You're trying very hard to uplift their rugby and be very competitive Premier B schools. So it's becoming, not becoming, it is a difficult league to participate in, and there's no respite. You don't get time off. It's sort of 12 to 13 league games in a season, and none of them can be taken lightly. And it's tough when you're a school like ours, where you don't play a squad system. For example, you get your best 15 players on the field, and you're expecting them to front up. It's Paul Jim, and then it's Boland Landbou, and then it's Bishops, and then it's Rondebosch, and then it's Paul Boys High, and the hits just sort of keep on coming. So it's a lot of toll on the boys, on their bodies, and you throw in the festivals in between, the 3 games in 5 days at the Easter Festival or something like that, and it's a lot of toll on the boys' bodies, and it becomes almost a sort of a war of attrition, as it were, trying to keep your best 15 players on the field.
Yeah, so you got your work cut out for you, Graeme, because everyone wants to win, but in the same breath, you're also trying to look at the longevity of these guys as well. So it's and
I think you're trying to make them enjoy you want to make an enjoyable experience for them. I think you trying to, it is schoolwear rugby, you want them to enjoy themselves, but at the same time, it's, as I say, it's a very competitive environment. Plus, you want them to enjoy their rugby, so they carry on playing rugby after school and develop a real love for the game. So it's a tricky one in the context of where we are. Yeah.
No, well, because that thing as well as Graeme is that like you said, you've pretty much missed out 2 years now of first team rugby. You feel sorry for the guys, but does it change your training at all in terms of, let's hope 2022 comes ahead with a season, but I don't know, do you just keep doing the same sort of training program, or have you had to sort of change things up a bit?
I'm no real sports scientist. I think from our point of view, we're going, I suppose it's the difficult thing is that, boys have almost, as you say, effectively almost missed now 2 years of rugby. So if you're under 13 and your next round you're going to play is maybe under 16 virtually, you've missed under 14, under 15. And it's quite a big jump physically, So, I suppose you just got to, what you're always trying to do, from a sort of competing, whether it's box smart point of view, you've got to make sure if you're going to be playing against a Paul Jim or a Paul Boys and those sorts of schools, and you've got guys from the southern suburbs, you have Cape Town, English-speaking guys, you've got to prepare them properly to go into those games, So you can't throw a guy into a match against a Paul Jim or a Paul Boys if he's not he hasn't got the right, body makeup, and he's not physically prepared to do it, because then he's probably going to get hurt, So, yeah, I think it's quite a big onus on us to make sure, particularly when the guys get into under 16 and then the senior divisions, that they are, physically prepared to go into contact against those sorts of guys. So yeah, I think we try and do that every year, but I think it's probably going to have to be even more of a focus now. Just the guys have missed so much. I think those are a lot of your formative years, your growing years, and the hits and knocks that you take on the rugby field, the training that you do on a rugby field week in, week out, helps to develop your body. So we probably are going to have to take some cognizance of that going forward.
Yeah, and it's almost like you have to do pretty much a retrial, because you've got your idea of who's coming in. You're looking at your prospects for 2022, but now, like you said, without any hits and guys actually playing, do you have to start looking at prospects and maybe have another look again to make sure you've actually got the desired result that you're looking for in terms of your prospects?
I mean, it's I think we go it sort of evolves every year. You have it's a fairly long pre-season, so we say nowadays the season ends at the end of August, and you give the guys a few weeks off, and then they start again end of September, early October, with gym work and some skills work. And so it's a continual process over the off season, October, November, early December, January, February, as you're building up to the season.
Yeah,
seeing who develops, who puts their hands up, how they develop physically in the gym, how they develop on the field in terms of their skills. And it's a changing dynamic all the time. Some guys come through that process and flourish, others sort of not so much. And then in the schools of guys, you've got guys who out of the system as well, playing cricket or playing water polo. You don't see much of in the off season, and then they might come back into the picture and really, you haven't really got them on your radar because you're not seeing much of them, but then they start playing and they flourish. So it's, as I said, it's an evolving environment, and you continue, your pool of players are that you're looking at, and you're watching them throughout the off season, how they develop, how they evolve, who trains well, who looks hungry, who doesn't. And boys being boys, it can be frustrating. You think one oak's putting his hand up, and then he gets lazy, and then another puts his hands up, and it's quite. But I suppose that's just the nature of what you're dealing with in schoolboys. Yeah.
No, definitely. Well, Graeme, let's put the focus a bit on you now. But how do you? And it's always I think it's a tough job to do what you do, but someone's got to do it. But how do you handle that expectation as head of rugby? Is it? I'm sure there is a bit of expectation. If I may ask, how do you handle that pressure?
I must say, I've never really felt too much pressure. I mean, as I've been here a long time, I coached the first team for 6 years as well. I never really felt too much pressure here to succeed, not to succeed, but obviously you're always trying to do your best, and all you can really do is take the boys. It's a school environment, so the boys come and go, and some years you have a good crop of players, others not so good. And I think you just got to trust that you do whatever you can to give the boys the best chance to succeed. And if on a Saturday that that you've prepared them well enough and given them the best chance to succeed, and you can when they cross the white line on a Saturday morning and to go into the field, and you're comfortable that you've coached them well, they're well prepared, there's not much more you can do. So I don't think obviously there's you do get the odd comment here and there, but generally I think the teams that we put out are reasonably well coached, and they on the field you can see that they've been prepared, they know what they're doing, and people are reasonably happy with that. You never have the odd year and there where there've been a few ups and downs, but generally I think we've done reasonably well with what we've got, and haven't had too much kickback, shall we say.
No, good, Graeme. That's great to hear. But yeah, it's a tough job, but you guys I think are doing a really great job, because like you said, the league that you're in is very competitive. So to handle everything that's thrown at you, it's really good. Well done. But let's look at the bigger picture, because obviously, like I said, it is only schoolboy rugby, and there's only a small percentage of guys that really take rugby that much more further to try and turn it into a profession. But you guys have done a good job, and there's a good number of guys that are still playing rugby at varsity level. Another example is the Bulls player, Graeme Wepener. And that's something that you guys focus on as well. It's like the sort of the bigger picture of the players beyond school.
Yeah, as I said, it's not something I would say, as I said earlier, it's more about the enjoyment and helping the guys enjoy their rugby so they develop a love for the game and carry on playing after school. It's not something, we don't really coach to try and get guys in the Cravenry team, for example, or anything like that. Obviously, if it happens, it's nice for the boys, nice for the school. But generally, we're just trying to, as I said, make sure week in, week out, we put a team on the field that's competitive and can hopefully win games in this league. But yeah, it's nice at the moment. I think, as you mentioned, I think Graeme Wepener was matric 2017. He was on the bench for the Bulls on the weekend against Western Province. In the Varsity Cup now, we had David Hayes started the final. Riaz Fredericks was on the wing as well, and IT Ghazi at fullback. So 3 players in the back line that started the final, plus one other, Durand Kufut, who got game time along the way in the tournament. So Jordan Charts at the Sharks, he's our flyer from 2015. Chris Smith started for the Bulls in Italy on the weekend. He was our flyer in 2012. Okay. And also at the Sharks, our captain from 2017, or Lucky Dlep, who is sort of the 3rd or 4th choice scrum half there at the Bulls. So I'm sorry, at the Sharks. So we've got quite a few guys in the system at the moment, which is lovely to see. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to when you've coached guys and helped develop them along the way to see them coming through and performing on the best stage, on the top stage. Yeah, I think probably Chris Smith's probably the one now who stands out the most. I mean, he's understudied in Morne Steyn. He got a full game, I think, on Saturday in that unfortunate defeat. But a guy who's really worked his way through. He did took Marty's to the Varsity Cup, went to the Pumas, won the Super Sport Challenge, I think it was, with them. The Pumas then got picked up with the Bulls. Jordan Chart the year after that, after Chris Smith won the Varsity Cup with the Marty's, Jordan Chart was the fly-off as well. So 2 years in a row, we had the fly-offs there for the Varsity Cup winning side. And then David Hayes this year played the final. So, yeah, that's lovely to see guys coming through the system and showing that SACS is producing quality players.
Yeah, well, they must have had a very good experience at school. So obviously there's a love for the game that's been instilled in them and that they're carrying it through. So it's, again, good on you guys. Well done.
Thanks,
brilliant.
Man, yeah.
But as we are sort of moving towards 2022, are there any goals or ambitions that you would like to perhaps share with us? Like, what are you sort of looking for, saying that the season's going to go ahead?
For next year, I mean, I think our overall, our goal really is in this area, I suppose, is to try and be the best school in the, I think there are 4 boys' schools fairly close together here in the southern suburbs. I think if we can be the best of those schools, the one that boys want to come to for a good rugby experience, and that is getting the best results out of those schools, then we'll be doing something right. So, because as you said, it's in all the sports, whether it's water polo, cricket, hockey, rugby, the 4 boys schools, we're all of a similar size, all with similar boys. So if we are the most competitive in any, or the top of the pile in any of those sports, we're in a really good place, because all the schools, the 4 boys schools, are brilliant schools. So, I think our sort of short-term goal would be to get back to being the top school in the southern suburbs, the top school in terms of where boys want to come to further their rugby, and then with that will come, being the top school results-wise, whether it's first team or across the board. I think we pride ourselves at the moment. I think we've got by far not by far, but the most rugby teams of all the 4 schools. So a lot of boys playing rugby, which is great. And now we just got to get that playing power into competitive power, particularly across the A teams and all the way up to the first team. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, Graeme, it's good that it sounds like you guys are, well, SACS is in very good hands, so keep it that way. But a quick one, where does the nickname Holler come from?
Oh gosh, it's a long story. It goes right back to, I mean, I actually went to Rondebosch. It goes right back to my school days in matric. It's a fairly long story, but it started out as a Hollander. Another parent who didn't know my name, and sort of, I don't know, he was angry with me for something and started shouting after me, Hollander, Hollander, and that got shortened to Holler, and so it's stuck ever since matric, which is 35 years ago now. And so yeah, it's been a name that stuck with me right from matric, right through varsity, through all my years here at SACS as well. So it's a long-term thing, but yeah, it's sort of stuck with me now. But it's all good.
I'm glad to hear that, Graeme. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Graeme, thanks for your time. Really nice to hear about your rugby program and how you guys are doing there. And yeah, it's unfortunate we couldn't watch more schoolboy rugby because it's such an attraction for many people in South Africa. But wishing you well, hoping all your plans go according to plan, especially for the upcoming season. Let's stay positive and let it happen. But yeah, Graeme, thanks so much for your time. It's been really good to chat to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We're hoping that this third wave can pass and we can maybe get some rugby in, but it's started to look more and more unlikely that we're going to get to play. But there's still talk of, they still want to have us, they talk of having Craven Week in October holidays. So maybe there still will be some rugby, some trials, something like that to look forward to. But I think, unfortunately, most of the boys, there's not going to be much left, which is sad. But we keep hoping, we keep fighting and planning, and hopefully it'll all be over quite soon. Thanks, man. Thanks for your time, Ron. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Graeme, you're a legend, dude. Thanks so much for your time.
All right. Thanks.
I'll let you know when
get the chat, right?
Like I do.
Yeah,
Cheers,
cool.
man.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.